Ambassador Jack Thornton adjusted his tie for the 14th time in the last 10 minutes. His hands, rough and calloused in ways diplomatic training couldn't explain, fumbled with the silken material as the massive doors to the Galactic Hegemony's Grand Assembly parted before him. "For the love of all that's holy, stop fidgeting," muttered his aide, Milo Quint, through a plastered smile. "You look like you're about to detonate." Jack's answering smile was lopsided and nervous. "Can you blame me? Humanity's first official representative to the most powerful political entity in the known universe, and they sent me. The guy who once accidentally declared war on Portugal during a model union college." The towering doors completed their dramatic opening with a reverberating boom that echoed through the cavernous chamber beyond. Dozens of alien eyes, optical sensors, and various sensory appendages swiveled toward the human delegation. Ambassador Thornton of Earth announced a multi-toned voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "You may approach the central dais." Jack stepped forward, immediately tripping over his own feet and sprawling face first onto the polished obsidian floor. His briefcase burst open, sending Earth's carefully prepared diplomatic documents flying in all directions. A ripple of what could only be described as alien laughter washed through the assembly. "Well," Jack said, climbing to his feet with an exaggerated wince, "at least gravity works the same here. That's promising." "Oh." The laughter grew. Jack's awkward smile widened as he began gathering his scattered papers. From her elevated position at the head of the assembly, Empress Vex Aura of the Galactic Hegemony observed the human with 6 sets of crystalline eyes. Unlike her subjects, she did not laugh, but a slight vibration of her cranial frills indicated amusement. "Ambassador," she spoke, her voice smooth like liquid mercury, "your entrance was memorable. Perhaps you would benefit from our artificial gravity adjustments. Humans seem rather fragile." Jack straightened, clutching his haphazardly collected papers. "Thank you, your luminescence, but I'd prefer to stay as I am. Humans are adaptable, if nothing else." "Adaptable?" questioned a delegate from the Kretla Confederation, a hulking reptilian creature with armor-plated skin. "Your species has barely mastered rudimentary faster than light travel, made your bodies bruise when struck by a gentle breeze. Your technology is practically Stone Age by hegemony standards." Jack nodded enthusiastically. "You're absolutely right, distinguished delegate. We are, by all measurable standards, hopelessly outclassed. It's actually quite liberating, knowing we're the underdogs. Takes the pressure off." The Kretla delegate blinked its vertical eyelids in confusion. Ambassador Thornton, Empress Vex Aura interjected, "Perhaps you could explain Earth's position on resource-sharing treaties within the Orion Spur." "Ah, yes." Jack fumbled with his papers, dropping half of them again. He bent to retrieve them, accidentally bumping his head on a hovering translation drone. "Sorry about that, little fella." The drone beeped indignantly. "Earth's position is flexible," Jack continued, seemingly struggling to find the right page. "We're new kids on the block, so we're primarily interested in learning how things work around here before making any major commitments. That is not how diplomatic negotiations function." The Kretla delegate growled. "You must state your demands and concessions clearly." Jack scratched his head. "Well, see, the thing is, we humans tend to approach relationships differently. We like to get to know each other first. Then maybe grab a coffee? Do you have coffee here? Probably not. Terrible addiction, really. Makes me jittery." But he demonstrated by shaking his hands vigorously, causing him to drop his papers yet again. Empress Vex Aura's cranial frills vibrated more intensely. "This human approach is unusual, but refreshing in its honesty. Perhaps we could arrange for a more informal setting to continue these discussions." "That would be wonderful, your luminescence," Jack beamed, finally giving up on organizing his papers and stuffing them haphazardly back into his briefcase. As the formal proceedings continued, Milo leaned over to whisper in Jack's ear, "They're underestimating us already. This is going exactly as planned." Jack's bumbling smile didn't waver as he whispered back, "Phase 1 complete, time to make some friends." Across the chamber, Commander Draz of the Hegemony Security Force narrowed his compound eyes. Something about these humans didn't add up. Nobody could be that incompetent and still achieve space travel. But then again, perhaps they really were just as harmless as they appeared. Empress Vex Aura concluded the day's proceedings, announcing a special reception for the Earth delegation the following cycle. As the assembly dispersed, she watched the human ambassador trip over nothing once more and thought to herself how charming these creatures were, clumsy, weak, but endearingly earnest. Little did she know that the most dangerous predator in the room wore a crooked tie and a self-deprecating smile. The reception hall of the Galactic Hegemony's central embassy glittered with bioluminescent chandeliers and anti-gravity champagne fountains. Ambassador Jack Thornton stood in a corner, somehow managing to look both lost and perfectly at ease simultaneously. "Try the blue stuff," Milo suggested, sidling up next to him. "Tastes like tequila mixed with blueberries, and just a hint of battery acid." Jack grimaced. "I'll stick with water, thanks. Spotted any potential allies yet?" "The Ozorlax delegation seems receptive. They've been watching us all evening with their eye stalks. Pretty sure they're curious rather than hostile." Jack nodded, then promptly spilled his water down the front of his suit. "Damn it! Not again." A passing server drone extended a cleaning appendage, which Jack gratefully accepted while loudly apologizing to everyone within earshot. "Ambassador Thornton," came the silky voice of Empress Vex Aura as she glided toward him. "I see you're making yourself noticeable." Jack's face flushed red. "Your luminescence. I'm so sorry about the mess. Seems like I can't go 5 minutes without some kind of disaster." "It is refreshing," Vex Aura admitted, her cranial frills shimmering with gentle amusement. "Most diplomats are so calculated. You are authentic ambassador. A rare quality in political circles." "That's a polite way of saying I'm a train wreck." Jack laughed, somehow managing to step on his own shoelace and stumble forward. Vex Aura instinctively reached out to steady him, her 6 arms moving with liquid grace. Across the room, Commander Draz watched the interaction with growing suspicion. The human's clumsiness seemed almost choreographed, and he couldn't help but notice how, despite his apparent incompetence, Ambassador Thornton had already spoken with representatives from 17 different species, most of whom now seemed charmed by Earth's diplomatic representative. "Keeping an eye on the humans," rasped General Kravzak of the Kretla Confederation as he approached Draz. "There's something off about them," Draz replied, "the timing of their accidents. It's too convenient." Kravzak's scaled lips pulled back in what passed for a smile among his kind. "Or perhaps they really are just that pathetic. Our intelligence suggests their planet is ripe for resource extraction. No significant defenses. Primitive weaponry. They'll make excellent laborers once properly subjugated." Draz's compound eyes narrowed. "The hegemony has accepted Earth's application for membership. Any aggressive action would violate our treaties." "Treaties," Kravzak scoffed. "Paper and promises. The strong do as they will, Commander. Remember that." Meanwhile, Milo had somehow managed to trip directly into the Ozorlax ambassador, spilling a tray of appetizers across the diplomat's gelatinous form. "Oh my stars. I'm so deeply sorry," Milo exclaimed, frantically trying to clean the mess with a napkin, which only seemed to embed the food particles deeper into the alien's translucent body. Strangely, the Ozorlax's color shifted to a pleased lavender. "No apologies necessary. My species absorbs nutrients through our dermal layer. You've just saved me the trouble of eating formally." "Really? That's fascinating," Milo gushed. "Our scientists would love to learn more about your biology. In fact, Earth would be honored to host a Sorlax scientific delegation." As Milo continued his diplomatic disaster, Jack found himself cornered by 3 Kretla subordinates. "Your species intrigues us, Ambassador," the largest one said. "So fragile, yet so persistent." "That's us. Cockroaches of the galaxy," Jack replied cheerfully. "Can't seem to get rid of us." "We've never encountered cockroaches," the Kretla stated flatly. "Trust me, you'd remember if you had," Jack said, then added with an innocent smile, "They survive nuclear radiation, you know. Fascinating creatures." The Kretle exchanged glances that Jack pretended not to notice. By the end of the evening, Jack had accidentally bumped into 14 diplomats, tripped over his own feet 7 times, and somehow managed to forge preliminary trade agreements with 5 different species, all while appearing completely out of his depth. As the reception wound down, Empress Vexora approached Jack once more. "Ambassador, I must say your diplomatic style is unconventional, but effective. The Sorlax rarely agree to scientific exchanges so quickly." Jack blushed appropriately. "Just beginner's luck, your luminescence." "Perhaps," she said, her tone suggesting she wasn't entirely convinced. "I look forward to seeing what other surprises Earth has to offer." "Oh," Jack replied with a guileless smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, "I'm sure we're full of surprises." 3 standard cycles later, the central chamber of the Hegemony Council was in chaos. Holographic displays showed a fleet of Kretle warships moving toward the Sol system, Earth's home. "This is an outrage," Jack Thornton exclaimed, his usual bumbling demeanor replaced by what appeared to be genuine panic. "The Kretle have no right to establish a security presence in our system." General Kravzak's scaled face remained impassive. "We have intelligence suggesting Earth is harboring weapons of mass destruction. The Confederation is merely conducting a preventative inspection." "With 50 warships?" Milo sputtered, dropping his datapad in apparent shock. As he bent to retrieve it, no one noticed him pressing a concealed communicator in his sleeve. Empress Vexora's cranial frills had darkened to a deep indigo, signaling distress. "General Kravzak, Earth is under provisional hegemony protection. This action violates 3 separate treaties that allow for security operations when justified," Kravzak countered smoothly. "We invite hegemony observers to accompany our fleet if you wish." Jack ran his hands through his hair, making it stand at odd angles. "This is insane. Earth has no significant defenses against a force like that. We're a peaceful planet." Commander Draz, standing at attention near the Empress, caught a curious expression that flashed across Milo's face, something like satisfaction, quickly masked by fear. It lasted only a microsecond, but Draz had been trained to notice such things. "The Azorlax alliance stands with Earth," announced the gelatinous ambassador, pulsing with resolute blue light. "Any aggressive action against them will be considered an act against us as well." Jack shot the Ozolax a grateful look that seemed genuinely touched. "Thank you, Ambassador. Earth won't forget this friendship." "How touching," Kravzak sneered. The weaklings band together. "Perhaps," Empress Vexora interjected, "we should allow Ambassador Thornton to consult with his government. Earth deserves a chance to address these accusations." "Of course," Jack said, clutching his datapad like a lifeline. "I'll need to speak with my superiors immediately." He began backing toward the door, tripping over a ceremonial floor tile and nearly falling. Sorry about that." As Jack and Milo hurried from the chamber, Draz made a split-second decision and followed them. Something wasn't adding up. The Kretle move was aggressive, yes, but the humans' reactions seemed rehearsed. Keeping a careful distance, Draz tracked the humans to a secluded communication alcove. He positioned himself just out of sight, his auditory membranes extended to their maximum sensitivity. "Decoration Trojan horse is green," Jack was saying, all traces of his stammering gone. His voice was suddenly crisp, authoritative, the voice of someone accustomed to command. The Kretle took the bait exactly as predicted. "Transmit authentication code Alpha Tango Warmonger to Central Command." "Already done," Milo replied. His fumbling persona likewise vanished. "Defense grid is quietly online. The Kretle won't know what hit them until they're inside the asteroid belt." "Perfect. And the Ozorlax?" "Completely on board. Their intelligence service has had the Kretle's number for years. They're just happy someone's finally taking action." Jack chuckled coldly. "The Hegemony has no idea what they've invited into their little club, do they? To be fair, we did warn them. Not our fault they couldn't read between the lines." "What was it General Mattock said? Diplomacy is just war with better clothes and fewer casualties." Usually. Draz felt his exoskeleton grow cold. These weren't diplomats, they were military strategists, using diplomacy as a weapon, and they'd just maneuvered the Kret-La into a trap of some kind. His mind racing, Draz began a discreet search of hegemony archives for information on Earth's military history. What he found sent a chill through all 6 of his limbs. Back in the council chamber, Empress Vexora was attempting to maintain order as various factions argued about the Kret-La's actions. The doors suddenly burst open as Ambassador Thornton returned. Once again the picture of disheveled humanity. "Your luminescence," Jack panted. Apparently out of breath from running, Earth formally requests hegemony mediation in this conflict. "We're a young species, we don't want war." As the chamber erupted in new discussions, Jack caught Milo's eye across the room. A nearly imperceptible nod passed between them. The trap was set. The hegemony's most exclusive diplomatic dining hall had never hosted such a tense meal. 2 days after the Kret-La announced their inspection fleet, Empress Vexora had arranged an emergency summit between the human delegation and Kret-La leadership. Jack Thornton sat at the massive crystalline table, fidgeting with his silverware and occasionally dropping a fork with a clatter that made several aliens wince. "Perhaps," General Kravzak suggested with barely concealed contempt, "your species would prefer eating with your hands?" Sorry, Jack mumbled, retrieving yet another fallen utensil. 7 forks is 6 more than we're used to on Earth. Milo, seated beside him, somehow managed to spill blue sauce across the tablecloth while trying to serve himself, earning glares from the Kret-La delegation. Commander Draz watched the humans intently from his position near the Empress. After what he'd discovered in the archives, he couldn't unsee the predators hiding behind those bumbling smiles. "Our inspection fleet reports they'll reach Sol's outer boundary in approximately 12 hours, Kravzak announced casually between bites. "We trust Earth's defense systems will remain deactivated during our visit." "Defense systems?" Jack laughed nervously. "We've got some satellites and a few old rockets. Nothing that would concern your fleet." One of Kravzak's lieutenants leaned forward. "Our intelligence suggests otherwise, specifically regarding something called Project Honeypot." Milo choked on his drink, spraying liquid across the table in what appeared to be genuine shock. Jack's eyes widened. I don't know what you're talking about." "No?" The lieutenant's reptilian smile widened. "Perhaps this will refresh your memory." He slid a small device across the table that projected a hologram of classified Earth defense schematics. The room fell silent. "Where did you get those?" Jack's voice had dropped an octave, his expression suddenly still. "Let's just say," Kravzak interjected, "that humans aren't the only ones who can play at espionage." What happened next occurred so quickly that most of the alien dignitaries had trouble processing it. The Kret-La lieutenant reached inside his ceremonial robe likely for a weapon, and in one fluid motion, Jack flipped his dinner knife into the air, caught it by the blade, and sent it spinning across the table to embed itself perfectly between the lieutenant's primary and secondary breathing slits. Not deeply enough to kill. Just enough to pin the alien to his high-backed chair, gasping in shock. Simultaneously, Milo had somehow produced a small metallic sphere that now hovered at eye level with General Kravzak. "That's a portable EMP device," Milo explained pleasantly, "all traces of clumsiness gone. One push of this button, and your neural augmentations go offline. I understand that's quite painful for Kret-La military officers." The entire room froze. Jack stood slowly, straightening his posture in a way that suddenly made him seem taller, more dangerous. "Let me clarify something," he said, his voice now carrying the unmistakable edge of command. "Earth doesn't have defense systems that would concern your fleet. Earth has defense systems that would obliterate your fleet." Empress Vexora's cranial frills had extended to their full alarmed position. "Ambassador Thornton, this violence is regrettable but necessary," Jack finished for her. "And it's actually Commander Thornton, 5th Diplomatic Special Forces. This idiot," he gestured to the pinned lieutenant, "just compromised a classified military operation and was reaching for a disintegration pistol." Commander Draz stepped forward. "He's right, Your Luminescence. The lieutenant was drawing a weapon. You knew about this? The Empress demanded. I suspected, Draz admitted. After researching Earth's history, they don't send diplomats to potential hostile encounters. They send soldiers disguised as diplomats. Milo, or whatever his real name was, smiled grimly. To be fair, we're not just soldiers. We're what Earth classifies as war criminals, too efficient at killing to be allowed in conventional warfare. So they point us at diplomatic problems instead. Diplomatic problems? Krav Zak hissed. Jack's smile was terrifying in its sudden sincerity. Hostile alien species with resource-hungry eyes turned toward Earth, for instance, the kind who might see our bumbling exterior and mistake it for weakness. This is unprecedented. The Empress's voice vibrated with shock. Actually, Draz interrupted. It's not. Earth's historical archives call it gunboat diplomacy. Speak softly, but carry a big stick. Alarms suddenly blared throughout the station. A communications officer burst into the dining hall. Your luminescence. The Kretla fleet is under attack. The Hegemony's strategic command center was a marvel of alien technology. Holographic displays showed real-time updates from across the galaxy, currently focused on the Sol system where the impossible was happening. The Kretla fleet was being systematically dismantled by what appeared to be nothing. What am I looking at? Empress Vexora demanded, her voice tight with controlled panic. The end of Kretla military superiority, Jack replied calmly. All pretense of incompetence abandoned. He stood with military posture, hands clasped behind his back, watching the destruction with clinical detachment. Commander Draz manipulated the holographic controls, zooming in on one of the Kretla warships as it suddenly broke apart along invisible seams. These aren't conventional weapons. There's no energy signature, no projectile impacts. Project Honeypot, Milo explained, now typing rapidly on a small device pulled from his pocket, aimed after an old Earth information security concept. You set up something attractive but harmless looking. Wait for the bad guys to stick their hands in then. He made a snapping gesture with his fingers. We seeded the outer Sol system with what appear to be dormant asteroids, Jack continued. In reality, they're stealth autonomous weapons platforms, undetectable until activated. The Kretla fleet is currently surrounded by roughly 300 of them. General Krav Zak, restrained by Hegemony security forces, hissed in fury. This is a violation of Hegemony weapons protocols. No species is permitted to deploy autonomous killing systems. Jack raised an eyebrow. Says the reptile who was planning to invade our homeworld. And technically, they're not autonomous killing systems. They're remotely operated. By whom? The Empress demanded. About 5,000 of Earth's most decorated veterans, sitting comfortably in virtual reality pods back home. Milo said with a smile. They think they're playing a video game tournament. We find it's better for their psychological health that way. Draz had pulled up another display, this one showing Earth's historical military archives he'd been studying. Your luminescence. I've been researching human history since I became suspicious of these diplomats. Their species has a unique approach to warfare and diplomacy. The display showed images of Earth's military history, everything from ancient battles to modern conflicts. Humans never stopped fighting each other until very recently, Draz explained. While most species evolve past internal warfare before achieving space travel, humans develop space technology while still engaged in global conflicts. They have more experience with war than any hegemony species. That doesn't explain this diplomatic deception, the Empress said, her frills vibrating with distress. Actually, it does, Jack interjected. Earth's greatest military leaders were often its most skilled diplomats. We learned that sometimes the best person to negotiate peace is someone who intimately understands war. So you're saying all human diplomats are, what, soldiers? Asked a Sorlax representative, pulsing with curious blue light. Not all, Milo clarified. Just the ones sent to potentially hostile situations. We're from a special division called Diplomatic Security Forces. Most of us have complicated service records. We're war criminals, Krav Zak spat. You admitted it yourselves. Jack smiled thinly. By some definitions, we're the ones who don't follow conventional rules of engagement, the ones too effective at asymmetrical warfare to be deployed in standard conflicts. Earth found a better use for our particular skills. On the displays, another Kretla warship disintegrated. The remaining vessels were attempting to retreat, but finding themselves boxed in by invisible barriers. "You need to call off this attack," the Empress demanded. "This goes beyond self-defense." "With respect, your luminescence," Jack replied, his tone hardening. "Earth disagrees. The Kretla came to our system with 50 warships. That's not an inspection, it's an invasion force." Milo held up his communication device. Say. However, we're prepared to accept their complete surrender. No further vessels need to be destroyed if they power down weapons and engines immediately." The Empress looked from the humans to the strategic display and back again, her worldview visibly shifting. "You planned this from the beginning. The bumbling diplomats, the seemingly defenseless planet, it was all bait." "We prefer to call it strategic misrepresentation," Jack said with a shrug. "A Kretla invasion was inevitable. We just decided to control when and how it happened." "And the rest of your diplomatic overtures, the trade agreements, the scientific exchanges?" asked the Asorlak's representative. Milo's expression softened genuinely. "Those were entirely legitimate. Earth wants peaceful relations with the hegemony. We just needed to eliminate the threat first. By making an example of the Kretla," Draz concluded grimly. Jack nodded. "Precisely. Humanity's first galactic lesson: don't judge a species by their diplomatic representatives. You might not like what's hiding behind the smile." One standard month later, the Hegemony Grand Assembly had reconvened for a special session. The massive chamber buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from across the galaxy whispered among themselves, casting wary glances toward the Earth delegation. Jack Thornton stood at the podium, no longer pretending to be clumsy or unsure. He wore a crisp diplomatic uniform now adorned with previously concealed military insignia, including several that made even the most battle-hardened species in the room shift uncomfortably. "Distinguished representatives of the Galactic Hegemony," Jack began, his voice clear and commanding. "I want to thank Empress Vex Aura for allowing Earth this opportunity to address recent events." The Empress's cranial frills remained neutral, betraying neither approval nor disapproval. After the Kretla incident, the political situation had become complicated. "Earth would first like to formally apologize for our tactical deception," Jack continued. "We recognize that our approach to diplomatic relations has been unconventional by hegemony standards." "Unconventional?" barked a representative from the Osorian Collective, a species of bear-like warriors. "You sent military assassins posing as diplomats. You concealed planet-killing weapons throughout your system." Jack's expression remained calm. "With respect, Ambassador, we sent specially trained protection officers with diplomatic certification. And those planet-killing weapons were precisely targeted defensive systems that disabled Kretla warships with minimal casualties. 98% of their crews survived. A distinction without a difference." The Osorian growled. "Actually," Milo interjected from his position beside Jack, "the difference is about 60 million lives. That's how many humans would have died if the Kretla bombardment protocols had been implemented against our major cities." The chamber fell silent. "Humanity has a saying," Jack continued, his tone softening slightly. "Si vis pacem, para bellum. If you want peace, prepare for war. For most of our history, we fought ourselves. It made us paranoid, but it also made us pragmatic." Commander Draz stepped forward from the security detail. "If I may, your luminescence." At the Empress's nod, he addressed the assembly. "And my investigation into Earth's approach has been thorough. What initially appeared as deception is actually a fundamental cultural difference." Draz activated a holographic display. In most spacefaring species evolve past internal conflict before achieving interstellar capabilities. Humans achieve space travel while still engaged in planetary wars. Their diplomatic core and military are intrinsically linked in ways we find alien. The display showed images of Earth's history: soldiers building schools in war zones, military officers negotiating peace treaties, diplomatic compounds with hidden security features. In human history, Draz explained, their most successful peacekeepers were often their most capable warriors. This isn't deception by their cultural standards, it's prudence. So we're supposed to accept that every human diplomat might secretly be a, what was your charming term, war criminal? Asked a Medusan representative, their tentacles writhing with agitation. Not every diplomat, Jack clarified, just the ones sent to potential conflict zones. And war criminal is a technical designation for unconventional specialists, not an indication of atrocities. Earth hasn't executed a prisoner of war in over a century. Empress Vex Aura finally spoke. The question before this assembly is not whether Earth's methods are unusual. They clearly are. The question is whether their intentions are compatible with hegemony principles. Milo nodded. Earth wants exactly what we've always said: we want peaceful trade, cultural exchange, and mutual security. We just have a different approach to achieving it. By hiding daggers behind smiles, challenged the Ursaurian. By ensuring the daggers never need to be used, Jack corrected. The Kretla situation could have been avoided entirely if they hadn't planned an invasion. The Ozorlak's ambassador pulsed with agreement. The humans protected themselves with minimal bloodshed against an aggressor that has threatened smaller species for centuries. I see wisdom in their approach, even if their methods are unfamiliar. Gradually, the mood in the chamber shifted from hostility to cautious curiosity. If the assembly permits, Jack said, Earth proposes a new type of exchange program. We'll host hegemony military strategists to learn our defensive techniques, and in return, we'll adapt our diplomatic approach to better align with hegemony expectations. As the assembly erupted in debate, a newly appointed Kretla representative approached Jack during the recess. Is it true, the alien asked quietly, that your most fearsome warriors are now your diplomats? Jack smiled a genuine smile with just enough edge to make the Kretla step back. Not all our diplomats are warriors, but all our warriors understand that diplomacy is the best weapon. War is failure. Peace through strength is success. Across the chamber, Empress Vex Aura watched the humans with new understanding. They weren't the bumbling newcomers she'd initially thought, nor were they the merciless predators the Kretla now feared. They were something more complex: pragmatic survivors with ancient warriors' wisdom wrapped in diplomatic language. The Empress made a mental note to check the credentials of the new diplomatic delegation Earth had announced was en route to her homeworld. Something told her those cultural attaches would have very interesting service records indeed.